toying with the remote possibility that a spherical concave world could have slipped through the cracks unnoticed by the brightest minds in today's modern technologically advanced world is quite a leap of faith, to say the least. One would have to completely scrap all he learned about his beloved home planet ever since being told by his kindergarten teacher that it spun like a top. But there is a nascent spark emerging from the circles of the free-thinking internet community, and this spark is not only rooted in solid scientific evidence that can be measured and tested, but is bridging the gap that modern convex earth-spinning rhetoric was unable to connect. Adding a literal glass ceiling to the equation solves unanswered riddles to the inscrutable megacriometeors, huge blocks of ice falling from the sky, tektites, the origin of Libyan desert glass, Bottlinger's rings, and quite a handful of other question marks side-noted in theoretical physicists' journals. But the psychology is hard to understand. If this is indeed true, that our once-thought light-years distant universe is simply contained snugly inside a concave shell, and the ground is actually curving upward as we gaily walk along its concave surface, how could all the space agencies and technological corporations keep this hidden for so long? We'd have to don our Hershey's kiss-shaped tinfoil hats and suffer the ridicule those conspiracy theorists willingly take. We'd have to cry foul to the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, and even blame Walt Disney and Stanley Kubrick. We'd have to assume the mindset of mankind was veiled with a hypnotic myopia that couldn't see the forest for the trees. We'd have to swallow the obligatory red pill and choose to inundate ourselves with the uncomfortable feeling of knowing something that 99.9% of the population didn't know. But ignorance is bliss. Why would we want to know the truth about the Earth? Especially since there are literally hundreds of thousands of professionals who tell us exactly what we want to hear about our home planet. There's no reason to entertain antediluvian concepts of the universe in this modern day. My God, we've destroyed the concept of a flat Earth, and now there are people trying to bring this concave Earth theory into vogue. Isn't it a little late to regurgitate ancient theories? I mean, this shit is Ptolemaic, Platonian even. But we who live in these hollows are deceived into the notion that we are dwelling above on the surface of the Earth, which is just as if a creature who was at the bottom of the sea were to fancy that he was on the surface of the water, and that the sea was the heaven through which he saw the sun and the other stars, he having never come to the surface by reason of his feebleness and sluggishness, and having never lifted up his head and seen, nor ever heard from one who had seen, this region which is so much purer and fairer than his own. Now this is exactly our case, for we are dwelling in a hollow of the earth and fancy that we are on the surface. Unfortunately for many, the convex earth-spinning, orbiting around the sun-planet in a vast universe breaks so many laws of science and physics that the scientific community is left kowtowing to theoretical bozos who conjure up creative fallacious solutions. You could say a vacuous big black hole of reasoning goes behind their warped minds. A lot of dark matter seeps up the crevices of their brains, expanding blood vessels as the red shifts to their faces while reading this. But I suppose backward mankind has to learn to deny their innate intuition that there is no spin to the earth, an intuition deeply woven into every child who sadly becomes a victim of cosmological indoctrination, being told to conform to the theories of much more intelligent people who know much better. So, the clowns prop up en masse, complete with sophistic jargon of billions and billions of buckets of bile and baloney, paid to unequivocally annihilate any entertainment of free thinking, all the while using shaming techniques to corral back in the logical dissenters. What's their main objective anyway? Why the hell should they preach their religion of bullshit to the people? Well, for one thing, it's easy money, easy fame, and easy accolades. They get the front row and front bill to speaking events. They get their names in lights, praised to hell, and back by the genuflecting crowds of ignorance. But there's just one little itsy-bitsy omission they left out of their model. Besides the fact that it's complete bullshit, they left out the G word. Yes, that G word. Where the hell is God in their model? Oh, that's right, he is in hell with their model. He's the elephant in the living room. He's the spaghetti monster in the sky. He's the flying pink unicorn. Incentive. Why talk about, even mention for that matter, a real-life heaven existing right smack dab in the middle of the fucking earth? Why mention an accurate biblical model placing heaven as a crystalline sphere containing all the little tiny sonoluminescent stars bathed in a vast celestial ocean? Think of the scale dynamics here. We are downsizing our average stellar size from 1 million miles to 1 millimeter. We're downscaling our sun from 864,000 miles to about 19 miles. Our beloved moon from 2,000 miles to about 13 miles. What the hell kind of foolishness is this anyway? You mean people actually believe this crap? The short answer, yes. And there are, unfortunately for many, the convex Earth spinning, orbiting around the sun planet in a vast universe, breaks so many laws of science and physics that the scientific community is left kowtowing to theoretical bozos who conjure up creative, fallacious solutions. You could say a vacuous big black hole of reasoning goes behind their warped minds. A lot of dark matter seeps up the crevices of their brains, expanding blood vessels as the red shifts to their faces while reading this. But I suppose backward mankind has to learn to deny their innate intuition that there is no spin to the earth, an intuition deeply woven into every child, who sadly becomes a victim of cosmological indoctrination, being told to conform to the theories of much more intelligent people who know much better. So the clowns prop up en masse, complete with sophistic jargon of billions and billions of buckets of bile and baloney, paid to unequivocally annihilate any entertainment of free thinking, all the while using shaming techniques to corral back in the logical dissenters. Many more starting to believe it every day, thanks to people like this crazy batshit self-proclaimed messiah, yours truly, whose shamelessly inundates the YouTube community with in-your-face truths and other nutbags like the wild heretic who compiles scientifically accurate articles. The alternative cosmogony world is picking up steam and fast. Century-old experiments of which the heliotards tried to suppress to hell and back, like the rectilineator and the tamarack mine shafts, are being dusted off and looked at with fresh eyes. Although modern physicists tried to debunk these tests, they never bothered doing what a true objective empirical scientist should do when presented with such controversial evidence, like retake the fucking test, bozo. Alright, so let's talk about the history of the concave Earth theory a bit more, and let's look at why it wasn't embraced by the world back then, when my hero Cyrus R. Teed was struck with the divine revelation back in 1869. He said he was met by a beautiful female deity who revealed to him the true form of the earth and that it was the housing to the complete physical universe. So, sounds feasible to me, right? I mean, why wouldn't you trust someone who claimed to be the new Messiah and was trying to convince everyone that they were living on the inside surface of the earth? He was simply trying to make this world a better place. He wanted to usher in the literal kingdom of God. What's wrong with that? But you know what? As kooky as it sounds, he was right about the earth, and as tenacious as he was in trying to help people see the truth, he, along with a geodesist named U.G. Morrow, set out to prove their skeptics wrong once and for all. They devised the ingenious rectilineator experiment, a device that used perfectly straight giant T-squares leapfrogged together to form a virtual airline which traversed across the Naples beach in Florida. They invited the bitter, earth-spinning, crusty skeptics to oversee the experiment to ensure satisfactory procedures in measurement, and proved unequivocally that while the vertical distance decreased as they traversed, so did too the Earth's concave validity increase. But sadly, the Zionist gatekeeping press refused to give Cyrus the light of day. But later, the crafty Germans keenly picked up on Cyrus Teed's premise. World War II-era intellectuals like Peter Bender, Karl Neupert, and Johannes Lang wrote credible material on the concave Earth, enough so to convince the whole German socialist movement to embrace it, but leave it to the propaganda machine of the Zionist Jews to suppress and distort it, for that's exactly what they did. If you believe they scrapped it due to a failed-up pointing spy telescope aimed at England, I have a bridge to sell you. Sadly, the concave Earth reality was totally shielded from the public, but the powers that be knew all too well of its truth. The CIA's post-war procuring of top-notch German scientists like Werner von Braun, who, completely cognizant of the cover-up, that's why he insisted on having Psalm 19:1 etched on his headstone, the heavens declared the glory of God and the firmament-glass sky declared his handiwork, helped to start the Bozo's circus of space travel with the help of Walt Disney, dubbing it the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. Knowing this, that the fascination and exuberance that space travel brought to the imagination of all age groups from tots to old rots, the astronauts began to manufacture and manipulate the mentality of the misinformed masses to monopolize on them through the media with moonings and Mars masquerades. Just like Santa Claus, NASA became the Nasanta Claus. He went to the moon several times and brought his dog Rover to Mars to pick up a bunch of presents for you and me. But of course, the taxpayers and politicians willingly gave NASA NTA generous funding for the trips. From there, Nasanta shuttled and space stationed on to shield the sheeple from the charade. But the Germans weren't out of the concave Earth entirely. On the contrary, they were the only ones that kept the theory alive. A tiny faction of concave Earth remnants remained back in their motherland to carry the flaming sword torch of Teed, Morrow, Bender, Lang, and Neupert. Enter the resilient tandem team of Rolf Kepler and Helmut Diel. This writer first came into contact with the German team back in 2003 via email exchanges. He studied their repostings of the rectilineator experiment results, understood how light bends upward within the Earth, read about the Tamarack-Plumbob mineshaft divergence anomalies, and came to the conclusion they were correct. But still, the theory left out one very crucial component, the lower glass sky at 100 kilometers high. Formed from heavenly sand that fell down from the upper crystalline sphere during the Great Flood, this secondary crystalline firmament stretched out to push the floodwaters down. The pretty promise of a rainbow was a result of the now glass-dispersed light being projected onto water mist in the air. Science clowns still to this day think rainbows are formed by the water droplets in the sky, totally avoiding the fact that they are merely the reflective surfaces of projection for the glass-dispersed light, which can form on other reflective surfaces as well, like garden hose spray. Some might say, what difference does this really make, concave or convex? But I suppose that if there were no foreboding tales of Chicken Little and Henny Penny yelling the sky is falling, and if there were no fear-mongering, board-wearing street prophets heralding the end is nigh, then I suppose there would be even greater apathy. So, in order not to alert the public, there is one particular 7-syllable word that is intentionally downplayed. The word is the much scientifically studied and little publicly known megakryometeor. It's a huge block of ice with mysterious origins.